up. I'm almost there. Be careful, you two.
It started with a simple walk, a quiet evening, the kind of evening where the world feels still, like everything has paused, just for a moment. The air was cool. A soft wind moved gently across the surface of the water, creating small ripples that shimmered under the fading light. And in front of me was a lake. Not just any lake. A lake that looked like it belonged to everyone. You could feel it, just by standing there. The calm, the familiarity, the sense that this place had always been shared, always been open, always been theirs. But it wasn't. Not anymore. Because just a few days earlier, without noise, without attention, without anyone even noticing, I had bought it. Pause. Let that sink in. Everything you're imagining right now, every memory those people had built around this lake, every routine, every habit, every assumption, all of it, rested on something that was never actually theirs. Slow transition tone. You see, this lake sat right in the center of the neighborhood. It wasn't hidden. It wasn't private looking. It wasn't fenced off or restricted. It was open, inviting, alive, the kind of place where people didn't just visit. They built their lives around it. Morning started here. Before the sun fully rose, you'd see quiet figures standing near the water, coffee cups in hand, steam rising into the cool air. Fishermen would already be there, casting their lines into the still water, moving slowly, patiently, like they had done it 100 times before. No rush, no noise, just routine. And that's the thing about routines. They create a sense of ownership, even when there isn't any. Slight pause, continue. Afternoons were different, louder, full of energy. Kids running along the edges of the lake, laughing, shouting, chasing each other without a care in the world. Kayaks sliding into the water, the soft scrape of plastic against the shore, followed by the gentle splash as they pushed off. Neighbors waving to each other, smiling like this place connected them, like this lake was the center of their world. And in a way, it was, but not in the way they thought. Soft, reflective tone. Evenings. Evenings were something else entirely. The noise faded. The energy slowed. Boats drifted quietly across the surface, barely disturbing the water. Lights from nearby homes reflected softly, stretching across the lake like glowing lines. And if you stood still long enough, it almost felt like the lake itself was breathing. Calm, steady, unbothered. To them, this wasn't just water. It was comfort. It was routine. It was identity. It was theirs. Or at least, that's what they believed. Tone shifts slightly, more serious. But belief doesn't make something true. Ownership does. And that's where everything changes. Pause, then continue slowly. I wasn't even planning to buy a lake. There was no big plan, no grand idea, no intention of changing anything. I was doing something simple. Going through old property records. Looking for a small investment. Something safe. Something predictable. Low risk. Routine. Easy. The kind of thing you do without thinking too much. But then, something caught my attention. At first, it didn't seem important. Just a small inconsistency. A gap. A missing connection in the paperwork. But gaps are where the truth usually hides. So I looked closer. And what I found made me stop. The lake, this entire lake, was listed separately. Not under the HOA. Not under the community. Not shared. Not public. Separate. Independent. It had its own title. Its own legal identity. Its own history. And most importantly, it had its own owner. Pause for impact. And the strangest part? No one seemed to care. Think about that. An entire lake, used by dozens of families, treated like a shared asset. And not a single person had questioned who actually owned it. Not the residents. Not the HOA. Not even the people who used it every single day. Because when something feels permanent, people stop questioning it. They stop checking. They assume. Slow build tone. But I didn't assume. I dug deeper. Days of research. Old records. Some barely readable. Some buried under years of neglect. Legal documents. Ownership transfers. Forgotten agreements. Piece by piece, I started putting the story together. And what I found was surprisingly simple. The developer who built the entire community had never transferred the lake to the HOA. Maybe it was intentional. Maybe it was overlooked. Maybe it was just forgotten. But the result was the same. The lake stayed private. Forgotten. Ignored. Until now. Pause, slightly stronger tone. When I realized it was available. I didn't rush. Opportunities like that, they don't need speed. They need certainty. So I verified everything. Lawyers reviewed the documents. Contracts were examined line by line. Boundaries were confirmed. Every detail mattered. Because I knew something that no one else in that neighborhood understood yet. If this deal went through, everything would change. Pause slow. And then, it did. The deal closed quietly. No announcement. No celebration. No attention. No one gathered. No one questioned. No one noticed. Just paperwork. And a signature. That changed everything. Soft tone. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Because people don't react to paperwork. They don't react to legal documents. They react to consequences. So I waited. 2 days passed. Nothing changed. The lake looked the same. The people acted the same. The routines continued. Like nothing had happened. But everything had. Slow transition. Then, on the third day, I walked down to the lake. Not as a visitor. Not as a neighbor. But as the owner. And that feeling is hard to explain. Standing there, knowing something no one else knew. Seeing something differently than everyone around you. It changes how you look at everything. That's when I heard the voice. Sharp. Immediate. Unquestioning. Excuse me. What are you doing here? I turned around slowly. And there she was. Karen. Standing like she had authority over everything in front of her. Arms crossed. Posture firm. Eyes narrowed. Already judging. Already certain. Already convinced she was right. I'm checking my property, I said calmly. No emotion. No challenge. Just the truth. She didn't hesitate. Didn't pause. Didn't think. She laughed. Not a small laugh. Not a nervous one. A confident laugh. The kind of laugh that says, I already know I'm right. This is HOA property, she said. You don't belong here. Pause. And that right there was the moment everything became clear. Not because of what she said, but because of how certain she was. There was no doubt in her voice. No curiosity. No hesitation. Just belief. And belief, without truth, is dangerous. There was no anger in my voice. No urgency. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my tone. I simply reached into my folder and pulled out a copy of the deed. Then I handed it to her. Quietly. She looked at it. Barely. A quick glance. A few seconds at most. Then she looked back at me and said, this doesn't mean anything. Long pause for impact. And in that moment, I understood everything I needed to know. She didn't care about the truth. She didn't care about documents. She didn't care about facts. She cared about control. And the moment she felt that control slipping, she did what people like her always do. She escalated. She reached for authority. She called the police. Slow, dramatic closing tone. And as she stood there, phone in hand, completely veer, and she was right. Everything around her was already shifting. Because what she didn't realize, what no one there realized yet, was that this moment, this single decision, was about to set off a chain of events that would change everything. In less than 24 hours. Fade out tone. And there was no going back. The sirens came fast. Too fast. The kind of fast that makes people stop what they're doing, turn their heads, and wonder, what just happened? It cut through the calm of the evening. Loud, sharp, impossible to ignore. Moments earlier, everything had been peaceful, still, predictable. And now, that peace was breaking. Because of one call. Pause. Karen's call. The kind of call made with confidence. With certainty. With the belief that the system would back her up. Without question. And as the sound of the sirens grew closer, you could feel the shift in the air. This wasn't just a disagreement anymore. This had become something official. Something public. Something no one could ignore. Slight rise in tone. By the time the police car pulled up, people were already gathering. Doors opened. Footsteps echoed. Curtains moved. Neighbors stepped outside. Drawn in by curiosity. Phones appeared in hands. Not slowly. Instantly. Because moments like this, people don't want to miss them. They want to see. They want to record. They want to be part of it. And just like that, a quiet lakeside became a stage. With an audience. Pause, shift focus. Karen stood near the edge of the lake. Exactly where she wanted to be. Visible. Centered. In control. Her posture hadn't changed. Arms crossed. Chin slightly raised. Completely confident. Certain she was right. Certain this was going to end exactly how she expected. This is it, she said loudly. Not just to herself, but to everyone listening. He's about to be removed. There was no doubt in her voice. No hesitation. Just certainty. The kind of certainty that comes when someone has never been challenged before. Soft pause. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Because sometimes, silence carries more power than words. Especially when the truth is already in your hands. Transition tone. The officer stepped out of the car. Calm. Measured. Professional. The kind of presence that doesn't rush. Doesn't assume. Doesn't react emotionally. He had seen situations like this before. Arguments. Disputes. People convinced they were right. And yet, this one was different. Even if he didn't know it yet. What seems to be the problem, he asked. Simple question. Neutral tone. But the answer was about to change everything. Karen stepped forward immediately. No pause. No hesitation. Pointing directly at me. He's trespassing on private HOA property. Clear. Confident. Direct. She didn't explain. She didn't question. She declared. Because in her mind, there was nothing to figure out. She already believed she knew the answer. Pause, slow shift. The officer turned to me. Not aggressively. Not suspiciously. Just waiting. Waiting for my side. Waiting for something real. And I gave it to him. I handed him the documents. Quietly. No explanation. No argument. Just the truth. On paper. Slow, detailed pacing. He took the documents. And unlike Karen, he didn't rush. He didn't glance. He didn't dismiss. He read. Carefully. Line by line. Every word. Every detail. And as he read, something subtle began to change. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But enough for people to feel it. The crowd got quieter. The whispers faded. The energy shifted. Because something wasn't matching Karen's confidence. Her certainty was starting to feel out of place. Pause. The officer read the papers again. A second time. Slower. More focused. Like he was confirming something. Making sure. Because what he was reading didn't match what he had been told. And that's when the moment arrived. He lowered the papers. Looked up slowly. And spoke. Ma'am. Just that one word. And everything held still. This lake. A slight pause. Is not owned by the HOA. Long pause for impact. Silence. Not just quiet. Silence. The kind where people stop breathing for a second. Because they're not sure they heard correctly. Karen blinked. Her expression didn't change immediately. Because her mind hadn't caught up yet. That's not possible, she said. Not angrily. Not loudly. Just disbelief. The officer didn't argue. Didn't raise his voice. Didn't try to convince her. Because he didn't need to. He simply pointed. At me. It's privately owned. Another pause. Then the sentence that ended everything. Buy him. Deep pause, let it sit. And just like that, everything changed. The shift was immediate. You could feel it. Like the ground beneath the entire situation had moved. The whispers started instantly. Confusion. Shock. Disbelief. People looking at each other. Searching for answers. That no one had. Because the truth had just been revealed. And it didn't match their reality. Slow emotional shift. Karen's expression changed. Not all at once. But piece by piece. Confidence. Slipped. Certainty. Faded. And in its place came something unfamiliar. Doubt. But everyone uses this lake, she said. And that sentence said everything. Not about ownership, but about assumption. The officer nodded slightly. Calm. Unmoved. That doesn't make it yours. Simple. Clear. Final. And just like that, the authority she thought she had was gone. Pause, deeper tone. But pride doesn't disappear that easily. Especially when it's been built over time. Reinforced by routine. Supported by silence. Karen didn't argue anymore. Not there. Not in that moment. Because there was nothing left to argue. The truth had already been established. But that didn't mean it was over. Not even close. Transition to next phase. That evening, things went quiet. On the surface. But underneath, something was building. Because when people lose control, they don't always accept it. They look for ways to take it back. And that's exactly what happened. I received a letter. Official. Structured. Deliberate. From the HOA. It didn't ask questions. It made claims. It stated that I was interfering with community property. It demanded that I restore access. Immediately. It mentioned consequences. Warnings. Possible actions. But there was one thing missing. No apology. No acknowledgement of what had happened earlier. No recognition of the truth. Just pressure. Pause, strong tone. And that's when everything became clear. This wasn't confusion anymore. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was resistance. A refusal. to accept reality. They weren't trying to understand ownership. They were trying to maintain control, even if it wasn't theirs. Slow, final build. And in that moment, I realized something important. This wasn't just a situation anymore. It was a turning point. A line had been crossed. And what came next wouldn't just change the lake. It would change everything. Because they were about to learn something they had ignored for years. And they would learn it. The hard way. Final slow line. This was a fight. They didn't realize. They had already lost. I had a choice. A simple one on the surface. Ignore it. Or respond. Let things continue. Or change them completely. Because after everything that had happened, after the police left, after the truth was revealed, there was still one question left unanswered. What happens next? Pause. Do you let people continue believing something that isn't real, just because it's easier? Or do you show them the truth, even if it changes everything? Slightly firmer tone. And I knew something important. If I did nothing, nothing would change. The same people would keep coming. The same assumptions would continue. The same false sense of ownership would remain. And eventually, the truth would be ignored, forgotten again, just like it had been for years. So I made a decision. Not emotional, not impulsive, deliberate. I acted. Pause, transition. The next morning, everything began. Not loudly, not dramatically, but clearly. Signs went up, one by one, placed where no one could miss them. At every entry point, along every path, near every dock. Private property, no unauthorized access. Simple, clear, unavoidable. No confusion, no interpretation, no room for argument. Just reality, written in bold. Slow build. At first, people didn't react. They saw the signs, but didn't process them. Because when something challenges what you've always believed, your mind resists it. It looks for reasons to ignore it. That can't be serious. It won't last. Someone will fix this. But this time, no one was fixing anything. Because this time, it wasn't a mistake. It was ownership. Transition tone. Then came the real shift. Not words. Not signs. Action. Workers arrived. Early. Focused. Prepared. They didn't ask questions. They didn't hesitate. They knew exactly what needed to be done. Tools were unloaded. Equipment set in place. Locks prepared. Everything had a purpose. Everything moved with intention. And that's when people started to notice. Because signs can be ignored. But action? Action is harder to deny. Slow step-by-step pacing. By midday, the transformation had begun. Docks were secured. Chains tightened. Locks installed. Spaces that once felt open now had boundaries. Gates were closed. Paths restricted. Access points controlled. Every entry, every approach, every assumption, blocked. And just like that, the illusion was broken. Pause, let it sink in. What once felt like shared space now felt different. Unreachable. Defined. Real. Energy rises slightly. And that's when the reaction started. Not slowly. Instantly. The group chats exploded. Notifications flooding in. Messages stacking on top of each other. Confusion spreading fast. What is going on? Is this real? Who did this? And then, confusion turned into anger. He can't do this. This has to be illegal. This won't last. The HOA will fix it. That one came up the most. Because people needed something to hold on to. Something familiar. Something that had always been in control. But this time, that control didn't exist. Because the HOA couldn't fix anything. They couldn't reverse it. They couldn't override it. They had no authority. And for the first time, that reality started becoming visible. Slow transition. By evening, people started coming down to the lake. Not casually. Not like before. But with purpose. With questions. With concern. Families walked the same paths. But slower. Quieter. More uncertain. And then, they stopped. At the gates. Locked. Unmoving. Final. Boat owners stood there. Looking out at the water. Their boat still there. Floating gently. Just like always. But now, out of reach. Close enough to see. Too far to touch. And in that moment, something shifted. Not in the environment, but in them. For the first time, they understood. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't a mistake. This was real. Paused emotional tone. And reality has a way of settling in slowly. At first, people resist it. Then, they question it. And eventually, they accept it. That evening, they were somewhere in between. Still hoping it would change. Still believing it might be reversed. But starting to realize it wouldn't be. Transition. Focus on Karen. Karen came back. But this time, everything was different. No raised voice. No shouting. No confidence. Just quiet steps. And a slower approach. You can't do this, she said. Her voice was softer now. Not demanding. Not certain. Just unsure. I looked at her. Calm. Steady. I already did. No emotion. No emphasis. Just truth. She hesitated. For a moment. It looked like she might argue. Like she might push back again. But she didn't. Because something had changed. Not around her. Inside her. Then she said, "This lake has always been for everyone." And that sentence carried everything. Every memory. Every assumption. Every belief. All in one line. I nodded. Not to agree. But to acknowledge. And that's why no one ever checked who owned it. Long pause. Silence. No response. Because there wasn't one. The truth had finally caught up. And there was nothing left to say. Slow reflective tone. Because now, they knew. Not suspected. Not guessed. Knew. 24 hours earlier. They thought they had power. They thought they had control. They thought they had authority. And now? Now they were standing outside locked gates. Asking for access. To something they never owned. And that's the difference. Between assumption and reality. Final emotional build. I didn't take anything from them. I didn't remove something they owned. I didn't break something that belonged to them. I simply showed them something they had refused to see. Ownership. Because ownership isn't about what feels right. It's not about what's familiar. It's not about what people believe. It's about what's real. Slow, powerful ending tone. And in the end, that's all that matters. Not the loudest voice. Not the strongest opinion. Not the longest assumption. Just reality. And reality doesn't need permission. It doesn't ask for approval. It doesn't wait to be accepted.